While it was 37 degrees Celsius outside today, I decided to do some investigation on my blue-black 124 in regards to what these additional poorly installed cables are connected to the positive battery terminal. They are at least fused, so that's why I didn't rush into finding out in the 6 or so years that I've owned this car. The fuses have not blown, so whatever they're connected to has not dead shorted at this stage. Just to show that, this is the fuse on the yellow wire. That's perfectly intact. The other one I did not open, but it wasn't blown anyway. We shall find out shortly exactly what's going on here, but I will warn you that I've only just scratched the surface of this abhorrent discovery. So this is the red and black positive wire going to this pile of rubbish. I believe this is a central locking device from the early to mid 90s. It appears to be tapped into the central locking harness on the passenger side of the car. Obviously it's not functional because the remote that I have at the moment does not operate the locking feature of the car. It basically only operates the immobilizer, which is the only feature of the alarm that's currently in the car that still works. That blue wire is disappearing into that cable management tray, and that's where it connects to, presumably, the central locking harness. And by the end of this video, you'll probably understand why I absolutely disapprove of the use of insulation tape. It's fine for a while, but if you plan on owning whatever it is you've used it on for a long period of time, the tape adhesive will always fail, which basically just results in bare conductors being exposed to anything that is nearby to touch them. And this module is not even connected to anything, so what I suspect is going on here is this car has had at least 2 alarm systems in its life. This motion sensor is not part of the alarm system that's in the car at the moment. I do remember removing one on the driver's side when I first got the car and found it not even connected to anything. And that's pretty much what I discovered after I took the driver's side off as well. So at least when this module was installed, they did use solder on the joints. I can't say the same for the other modifications I've seen in the car. To say I'm disgusted is an understatement. So I've just added that link there. Should I decide to install wireless remote locking in the future, I will just cut that join instead, if that is the central harness. I'm pretty sure it is. And I've left that ground screw as well for something to connect to. And that is my high temperature cloth tape that I've used. It's the same stuff that presumably was used at the factory on these cloth wrapped harnesses. It's way better than PVC insulation tape. I don't know if it's waterproof. It probably isn't, but that's not an issue when it's inside the car. It's time to find out where that's going now. But before that, I decided to chase this orange cable that's going to that poorly terminated yellow connector at the battery. And I did find that it goes to the trailer wiring relay box at the rear. This is necessary if you want to have a trailer connected to the car and not throw up the lamp out warnings, etc. I do use that trailer connection very occasionally. I have used it like 3 times since I've owned the car, so I will leave that in place for now. That's the trailer connection that you'll see in Australia. It's one of a few different versions we use here. I don't know if it's used anywhere else in the world, but that's what we use. So I don't like that they've used this mains terminal block to join these two cables. I will fix that up. And I will glue up that extremely large hole in the rubber grommet as well. So that's soldered and with heat shrink. And I also applied my cloth tape for good measure as well. Although it's not necessary, it would have done the job as it was. And that's the brand that I use, not cheap rubbish. So it's already starting to look good, but unfortunately that's the tip of the iceberg. So this is the end of that ultrasonic motion detector cable. It's been cut, it's not going anywhere. So why the hell is that sensor even there? I suspect that was part of the first alarm system that was installed. So it's not required. It can go. And then I discovered something even more abhorrent. You've literally got the terminals right there, yet the current alarm system, the idiots have damaged the factory cabling to connect to. Why wouldn't they just put an I terminal on the end of that cable and bolt it down to where it was going? It's like 1 inch away. I don't understand this stupidity on display here. This is just ridiculous. Remember, these cars cost as much as a house when they were new. How dare they do this to a car like this? You would have just seen the siren that's part of the current alarm system. That does not work. The rest of that alarm system does. So up until this point, I was unsure of what to do with that system, whether I should try and fix the siren or just rip it out completely. It is still operating as an immobilizer, but realistically, when you're a 124 owner, if you even have a failure of the ignition lock, you can't even start your own car. So why bother? I also noticed some butchered wiring in here. I'm not sure what this connector even goes to, but whatever this butchery is that's been done to it is no longer required because the cables have just been cut off and wrapped with insulation tape. And the terminations were not soldered. They basically just stripped the insulation off and wrapped another wire around the bare copper. I don't find that acceptable at all. Again, on a car that was this expensive when it was new. So I went ahead and fixed those. I desoldered the 2 pins at the end of those wires and double heat shrunk those cables, so there's absolutely no risk of them coming into contact with anything now. And then I put the connector back together. So that's one of many issues solved now. And the more I looked, the more I discovered. Here are 2 high current cables that have been butchered in the past. Whatever was connected to them, I have no idea. And as ridiculous as it is, these connections were not even soldered, so they could have just removed the remnants of these wires by simply pulling them off, but they didn't even bother doing that. They just wrapped it with insulation tape. How lazy is that? So again, I went ahead and double heat shrunk these cables. I'm happy with that. And both of those are done now. Obviously, factory original would be best, but I don't have that luxury. Some idiot has already butchered my harness. Now, because it's getting so damn hot in the shed, I wanted to connect the battery so I could at least get the passenger window down so I could get my air conditioner blowing inside. And that's already looking a lot better than it was before. and I just went ahead and tested the central locking to make sure that was still functional, and it was. No problem at all. And that dodgy alarm system that is in the car still does still operate. And of course I did try the key in key position too, to make sure everything else was okay, and it was fine. It was then time to proceed with more nightmare discoveries. Now, as mentioned, I'd only found the tip of the iceberg so far. It's like when they installed this second alarm system, they probably used about 3 rolls of PVC insulation tape, and naturally it's all starting to come loose. This relay here I discovered is the one that flashes the indicators. And there's also this vibration detection device mounted on the steering column. That seems to still operate. Other than the central locking not being connected to this alarm system and the siren not working, it does still somewhat work. So that's the motion detector or vibration detector. Just moving it around in your hand does get it to trigger, so obviously that still works. And I just played around with this alarm system trying to get it to do something. That left button appears to be the panic button, and the right button is lock and unlock. So I'm not sure what the deal is with these remotes. Maybe they're just generic replacements for the originals, but they don't actually match up with the icons that are on the remote. I found that kind of handy because if someone ever stole my keys, they wouldn't know how to actually start the car, because it's counterintuitive to what is on the actual remote. You actually have to lock it to unlock it, if you know what I mean. I was honestly on the fence about this alarm system. I'm pretty sure I'd be able to fix the siren, if not replace it with something else. But further discoveries later have made the decision pretty easy. I'm not sure what I'm going to do about that hole in that plastic panel if I remove this system. Finding another one is not going to be easy. Though, if I do install the wireless central locking module, they do have an LED, so maybe I can use it for that. That is an option. So that's a demonstration of the motion detector actually working. There is a timeout for the car to actually be fully armed after it's locked. So moving it around before it's completely armed did nothing, but after the timeout it obviously set the alarm off, which doesn't actually work anymore. So here is more butchered wiring that I've discovered under the driver's side kick panel. Not happy with any of this. I suspect it's mostly to do with that alarm system, but there's way too much insulation tape for my liking. And just the way they've installed these cables is atrocious, to say the least. The discoveries weren't over yet. As I opened up the cable tray on the driver's side, I found more butchered wiring. Again, I'm not sure what that is. Possibly that's for the central locking as well. Because remember, there has been 2 alarm systems in here. I don't know which one is which. It could even have had a 3rd alarm system, because I found this butchered wiring as well in the driver's side A-pillar, which I'm going to have to rectify. And then I found this as well. The tape literally just fell off that connector as soon as I touched it. So that's going to the current alarm system, and that's made my decision pretty easy. I've decided I'm just going to rip it out completely. But not today, because it's like 50 degrees Celsius in this shed. The air conditioner is struggling, even though it's blowing straight into the car. But over the next 2 days, it's going to be a lot cooler, so that's what I'm going to do with my Easter weekend. The battery is not going to be left connected to this car until all of this crappy wiring has been rectified up to my standards.